Stuka Joe here, and today we're going to do a little one-turn demo showing the sequence of play cards for RAF, the Eagle version. The Eagle version is the solitaire version where the player controls the German Luftwaffe. And I've never played this game before. I played the Lion version. I did sequence of play cards, which I'm going to show you now. Let's place the camera here on the holder and let's take it from there. We see the sequence of play deck that we will be using, 33 cards divided by the phases of the game, but each card is a segment, starting with the daily planning phase, then moving on to the raid phase, then we have the airfield operations phase, and finally the calendar update phase. And you can see that the board includes a sequence of play outline. Hopefully this sequence of play deck will be more useful, containing more information. And the idea is for the player to not to have to consult the rules so frequently. So let's see how it goes. Here we see the starting positions for the Luftwaffe units. This is Luftflotte 2. And the planes start in boxes for each type of aircraft. Here we have Luftflotte 3. And to the left we have the turn record track. We will only be playing one turn, which is the August 11 turn. We have the British squadrons set up in their sectors. You see here 11 group, which is the most numerous or more important of the groups. Here we have 10 group and finally 12 group. The beginning of the game, the raid priority for the Germans is industry and cities low, airfields medium, and ports and radar high. We start by flipping the topmost card. We will be using the night rules, and the first card reads German night raid planning. And here we assign to night raid boxes a number of grouping within the range in the German night minimum maximum chart, depending on the industry and city target priorities. We saw that both are low, so we can choose 2 to 4 bomber grouping that can be assigned to night raids, and Stukas cannot be assigned to night raids. We'll be assigning 2 units, 2 grouping, one from Luftflotte 2, which is a Dornier grouping, and the other one from Luftflotte 3 is also a Dornier grouping. Now we go to the next segment. In the daily planning phase, we flip the next card. German strategy draw, but this only applies beginning on August the 12th, and we're in August 11, so we skip this step. We go to the next step. Raid target selection. We draw 10 target cards. The morning haze is not in effect. And then we refer to the raid priority table, which is on the map, and we discard any cards for which there's a no raid target. And then of those remaining, we select the target cards. Any target cards that we don't select are discarded, and then we place the target cards on the raid planning track. Note that we will not be playing with advanced rules, and this is a reminder of an advanced rule. If we would be using the advanced rules, this is a reminder that forward airfield targets may apply in this phase. I've shuffled the target card deck. Let's deal 10 cards and let's take a look at them. Now, before we take a look at the cards, those cards that result in no raid are not eligible. For example, if we draw an industry target with a strategic value of 1, that would be a no raid, but an industry target with a strategic value of 3 is a minor raid. We could use that card. So let's see what we got. We got Weymouth, a port, that is high priority, strategic value of 3, that's a major raid. We also have Tangmere Airfield. This is an airfield with a strategic value of 1. Airfields are medium priority. This is a no raid, so this card is removed. We have Southampton, a port, high priority, strategic value of 2. This qualifies for a major raid. Weymouth, port, strategic value of 2, also qualifies for a major raid. Beachy Head radar net, also high priority, strategic value of 2, qualifies for a major raid. Here we have South End City, strategic value of 3. This qualifies for a minor raid, so we keep it. Tangmere Airfield, strategic value of 3, qualifies for a major raid. Rye radar net, strategic value of 2, also qualifies for a major raid. Southampton Industry with a strategic value of 2. This is a no raid because industry is low priority, so we remove this one. And Rochester Industry with a strategic value of 1 is also removed. Of the 7 cards we have 3 targets in Luftflotte 3's area. And notice that 2 are for the same location, Weymouth Port. So what we will do is, to try to trap the British and fool them, is we will make an early raid on Weymouth Port just with fighters to see if we can lure in the RAF so that in the next time slot when we send the bombers, there won't be a lot of fighters around. So now we place the target cards on the raid display track. And we placed a 600 time marker there. We will not make any raids at 600 hours. We'll start at 800 hours. And we will have a raid on Weymouth Port by Luftflotte 3 at that time slot. And then we're going to do our first raid from Luftflotte 2. And that's going to be Beachy Head radar station. Radars and ports are primary targets. Now we could place one more target card here. The maximum is 3, but we don't want to have problems with rendezvous and losing group and that do not conduct rendezvous. So we will place the next time marker, 1000 hours. And here we will place the Weymouth card, the second one, Luftflotte 3 attacking, and let's place another one for Luftflotte 2. It will be now Rye radar net. So we will have 2 raids at 1000 hours. We could place a third one, but we won't. The next time slot is 1200 hours. 1200 hours will only have 1 raid, which will be on this city, South End. That will be a minor raid. And we will go to the next time slot, which is 1400 hours. We have these 2 cards left. Tangmere, notice that they are in the same sector. That is Sector 1 of 11 group. So we will make a raid on Tangmere Airfield, hopefully draw the aircraft at 1400 hours, the British fighters. And then in the last time slot that we will place or allocate raids to, we will have the raid on Southampton by Luftflotte 3. So now we go to the next segment, bomber assignment, and we have to assign at least 1 bomber group into each raid, and we move the bomber counter from where it is to the on top of the target card. And there are limitations for major raids depending on the number of raids that we have this turn. We have 7 raids. That means that major raids cannot exceed 11 grouping. Let's take a look at the bomber assignments. Note that for Weymouth at 800 hours, no bombers, because we're going to place fighters there to see if we can entice the RAF to come out early and expend themselves. The Beachy Head raid has a total of 5 grouping, 3 of Heinkel 111s, 2 of Stukas. Then we have the second raid on Weymouth. We have a total of 6 grouping, 3 of Heinkel 111s and 3 of Stukas. That's also with Luftflotte 3. And then Rye radar net, Luftflotte 2. We have a total of 5 grouping of Dornier 17s and Heinkel 111s. Then at 1200 we have the minor raid at South End City, 2 Junker 88 grouping, and we can add 1 more fighter grouping because the maximum is 3. And then finally, at 1400 hours, the raid on Tangmere Airfield, we have 6 Gruppen between Henkel 111 and Dornier 17s. And at 1600, the final raid of the day on the port of Southampton, a total of 6 Gruppen between Heinkel 111s and Stukas. On to the next step, German fighter assignment, and now beginning with the earliest time segment to which we have assigned a raid, that is the 800 hours time step, we assign fighter groupings to raids in the first 3 segments of the day. And we move the Gruppen from their boxes to their target cards. So we assign fighter grouping now to the raids that are plotted for 800 hours. We have 2 raids there. The 2 raids at 1000 hours and the raid at 1200 hours. At 800 hours, the raid on Weymouth is really a fighter sweep. We have 7 Gruppen, 4 of Me-109s and 3 of Me-110s, and those are from Luftflotte 3. Then at the same time, at the same hour, the raid on Beachy Head radar net, we have a total there of 6 Gruppen of Me-109s from Luftflotte 2. Then we move to 1000 hours, and we have the second raid on Weymouth Port from Luftflotte 3. Here we have a total of 5 Me-109 Gruppen. Then the raid on Rye Radar Station, this is Luftflotte 2, and in this particular situation we have 6 fighter Gruppen, 4 of Me-109s and 2 of Me-110s, and finally the 1200 raid, which is a minor raid on Southend City. We only have 1 Me-109 fighter Gruppen accompanying the bombers. On to the next segment, night patrol assignment, and we roll on the British night patrol table to find out the number of Blenheim squadrons that are assigned to night patrol, and we move them from the map to the night patrol boxes on the tote board. And we are in the August 11 turn, so we will use this column and we roll 1d6. The roll is a 4-2, so we select 2 squadrons using the following sequence that is found here in the bottom part of the card. We select the squadron in Sector 6, 11 group, and then Sector 3, 12 group. So we take the squadron in Sector 6, 11 group, and we move it to the night patrol box for that same sector and group. Finally, the one for the 3rd sector, 12 group, we place it also in its corresponding night patrol box. Next segment, repair. We skip this segment on the first day of the scenario. This is the first day, August 11, so we move on to the next step. This is the last segment of the daily planning phase, time of day and weather forecast. We place the clock marker in the earliest space of the clock to which we have assigned a raid. The earliest raids are set for 800 hours. So we place a time marker on the 800-hour space in the clock. Now we roll a die on the weather table to determine today's weather in Luftflotte 2 and Luftflotte 3's areas, and we place cloud markers accordingly. So let's roll the die. The roll is a 2 clear in Luftflotte 2's area and partly cloudy in Luftflotte 3's area. No marker has to be placed in the area for Luftflotte 2 as it reads clear. And we place a patchy clouds marker for Luftflotte 3. I'm using the old edition. I think they changed the wording from patchy to partly cloud. The cards have the language that pertains to the newest edition. So that explains that inconsistency there. Now we move along to the raid phase, and we flip the first card of the raid phase, and it reads, raid selection and deployment. And we select the target card from the current time segment, which is 800 hours. This is the raid to be executed, and we place group and assign to the target card in the raid display. Bombers to the bomber box. ME-110s to close escort if there's one bomber in the bomber box, or we can place them in the bomber box instead of the close escort box. ME-109s are placed in the channel patrol box depending on how many bombers there are in the raid. And the remaining 109s go to the hunt box. They can go to the close escort box if there's at least one group in the bomber box. Or we can place them in the bomber box, and they would become what is known as strafers. And here we see the target that we are attacking at this time, the port of Weymouth. That is in 10 sector. You see that the radar stations that protect this target are West Prawl and also Worth, and we have these squadrons in the vicinity. We have to determine if they will be able to react successfully and attempt to intercept. So we execute the first raid on Weymouth, and all the grouping there are fighter grouping. If there would be any bomber units in the bomber box, then we would have ME-110s in the close escort box, but there are no bomber units, so the ME-110s go to the bomber box. And then the ME-109s, normally if there's bombers in the raid, we would have to place a number of ME-109s on channel patrol, but there's no bombers in the raid. All these grouping are fighter grouping, so all 4 ME-109 grouping go to the hunt box. The next step is British detection. We roll a die, apply modifiers, and consult the detection track to determine the warning and intelligence levels for this raid. Here's the detection track, the modifiers that we will apply here. We start by rolling 1d6. The roll is a 2, and we start by adding the target card's observer core value for the current weather. Current weather is patchy clouds, so that is a 2. So we have +2 for now. For each undamaged radar net listed on the target card, and there's radar nets 1 and 2 which are undamaged, so that's 2 more per net. So that means that we're right now at +6. All grouping are ME-109s? No, that's not correct, so it doesn't apply. If 3 or more radar nets are damaged, we apply no modifiers. That doesn't apply either. And now we modify for the number of grouping in the raid. We have a total of 7 grouping, so it's a +3. So it's +6 +3 is 9, and we add the die roll +2 gives us a total of 11. And 11 means that the warning level is sufficient and the intelligence limited. Now, if the intelligence level was poor, we would follow these instructions to see how the British consider the raid, but the intelligence in this particular case is limited, so that doesn't apply. And we didn't have a no warning result, so that doesn't apply either. And we move on to the next segment. The raid rendezvous check, we have to roll to see if there's rendezvous failure. So we start by rolling 1d6. The roll is a 1. There's rendezvous failure if this raid is one of 2 or 3 raids from the same Luftflotte planned for the current time segment. There were 2 raids planned for this segment, but they are not from the same Luftflotte. The Weymouth raid is for Luftflotte 3, while the Beachy Head raid is by Luftflotte 2. So rendezvous failure does not occur, and that's good for us. So we flip the next card for the next segment. British raid response. And we refer to the eligible sectors chart on the target card to create what is known as a raid response pool according to the corresponding warning level, and we will be placing all the squadrons that qualify for that raid response pool in this opaque cup. And there's a selection priority per eligible sector. We first pick the type that is more plentiful and we pick a Spitfire if there's an equal number of types. The warning level is sufficient. That means that Sector 410 group contributes up to 3 squadrons. Sector 310 group and Sector 110 group each contribute 1 squadron. So Sector 410 contributes 3. It has 3 of Spitfires and 1 of Blenheims. The Blenheims don't fight it out during the day, so the 3 Spitfire squadrons go into the response pool. And now Sector 110 group contributes 1, and it has 1 Hurricane squadron, so that goes into the response pool. And the other one is Sector 3, and Sector 3 is here. It has 2 squadrons, both are Hurricanes, so it contributes 1, and we place 1 here in the response pool. We have 5 squadrons in the response pool, and now we have to roll a die on the raid, it should be priority response chart, to find a response priority that can be minimal, low, high, or all out, and the number of squadrons to be randomly removed from the pool. Let's take a look at that particular table. Here's the raid response priority chart, and this will tell us how many squadrons we remove from the response pool, but we have to apply a number of modifiers first based on several factors. Date is the first one. We're in August 11, so no modifier applies for date. Our target sector is in 10 groups, so that 11 group modifier doesn't apply. Our target is a port, so those modifiers don't apply. The target is not deep, that does not apply. Warning is not very early. Intelligence is limited, so we have a +1 because the raid has 7 grouping. And there's still target cards yet to be resolved in the same segment, 1 other target card, so there's a -1. So the total modifier is 0. So now we roll 1d6 and we determine which column, which response priority will apply. We roll 1d6 and find the result on the topmost row. And the roll is a 2. So the result is here. Minimal response. There's a total of 5 squadrons in the response pool, so 3 of them are taken out. That means only 2 will respond to the raid. So we take 3 of them randomly out, and those that we take out will return to their respective sectors on the map. And the 2 squadrons that will respond to the raid are a Spitfire and a Hurricane squadron. So we use the raid response tactics charts to determine if the squadrons that are selected respond or not. And the first chart here does not apply because there's no bombers. So we move on to the next chart, which only applies if there's no bombers and intelligence is accurate. So that one doesn't apply either. Now we move on to the limited intelligence chart. We have a total of 2 squadrons in the pool and 7 grouping. The result is no squadrons respond. So we return both of these squadrons to each of their sectors and they remain full side up. And we continue here. If no squadrons are eligible to be taken, there is no response. Go to step 5, Hunter Interception. So Hunter Interception is actually step 13, so I have to fix that particular card. So I'll be fixing that with the next version. So here we go. Hunter Interception, the only one that applies, these are if-then statements. Only one of them applies. It's this one. If no squadrons are in the hunt box, we move all grouping in the hunt box to the in-flight box, and all grouping in the close escort box to the bomber box. They become strafers. So the ME-109s in the hunt box go now to the in-flight box. We have no units in the close escort box. The bomber units are now the Me-110s, and they will become strafers. And because there's no squadrons in the bomber box, we will apply a 2-column shift to the right when bombing. Next, a raid approach event. We draw an event card and apply or implement the approach event. Here's the event card deck. Let's flip the topmost card. And the approach event, we refer to the event that has the E for Eagle, escort, rendezvous, failure, all C grouping in close escort box leave the raid. We don't have any grouping in the close escort box, so this event is ignored. To the next step, it's the hunter attack, but there's no squadrons in the hunt box, so we completely ignore this step, and we go to the next step, step 16, raid target event. So we draw another event card and consult the target event. So we flip an event card, and the target event for the Eagle game is flak. Reduce all B type or B selector grouping in the bomber box. And we have one B Me-110 in the bomber box, so it is reduced. Now it has a bombing rating of 1. On now to the next step, and this is the squadron interception step. If the squadrons are as numerous as the grouping or more than in the bomber box, then all grouping are intercepted. But there's no squadrons in the display, so this entire step is ignored. As you see in the bottom, if no squadrons in bomber box, move all grouping in close escort to the bomber box. We don't have any in close escort. We only have the 3 Me-110s in the bomber box. So we continue with the next card. Squadron attack. Again, we have no squadrons, so this is also skipped. And finally, we reach the bombardment segment. We conduct a bombardment of the raid's target with all the grouping remaining in the bomber box. And if the target is damaged, we implement the effects and subtract victory points. And after that, all grouping in the raid display move to the in-flight box after the target is bombed. So we have 3 grouping of Me-110s, one of them reduced. And again, this is the bombing strength. So we add the bombing strength. That is a total bombing strength of 5. And because no squadrons were in the bomber box, we apply a 2-column shift to the right. Here we have the bombing table. We start here in this column because this is the total strength, bombing strength of 5. There is a situation where no bombers were intercepted, no squadrons were in the bomber box at any point, so we have a 2-column shift to the right. We're at the 8-9 column, and we have patchy clouds. This is Luftflotte 3's sector, so there's a 1-column shift to the left, so we're now finally in column 6, 7. So we roll 1d6. The roll is a 5, 2 damage points, and that means that 2 victory points are subtracted. So the victory point marker is flipped to the German or negative side, and we place the marker in the number 2 box. We see here that the target is a port, Weymouth. There's no additional effects as a result of bomb damage. If this would be a radar, a headquarter, or an airfield target, there would be additional damage effects. Now all grouping that participated in this bombing move now to the in-flight box. On to the next segment, German recovery. All grouping in the in-flight box are moved to their air bases or to the clock as per the German recovery schedule, that is in the in-flight box. In this case, there were no bombers. We have all fighters at full strength except one. Those go to the clock 3 spaces from now, and reduced fighters go to the clock, flip to full, 4 spaces ahead from the time period where we are now. So the full strength fighters are placed in the 1400 space on the clock, and the reduced strength 110 is placed in the 1600 space, but full side up. Now this is the last step of the raid phase, clock check. We flip the target card for the raid just completed face down on the clock track to indicate a completed raid. On the clock track. That's how it reads in the rules, but I believe it should be that you flip the target card face down on the raid planning track, not on the clock track, because the clock track is just this round clock where not a lot of cards can fit there. So we're flipping it on the raid planning track face down, so that means that raid is completed. So now if there are any face-up target cards remaining in the current time segment, the answer is yes. The next raid, which is Beachy Head, which is at the same time, then we return to step 9, raid selection. So what we do here is we locate raid selection and we leave that card visible, and the others we simply flip them over and we're ready to start with the next raid. Raid selection and deployment. We select the target card for the current time period, and this is the raid to be executed. And we place the group in assigned in the raid display as we've seen before. Here we see the target of this raid, Beachy Head Radar Net in Sector 2, 11 group, and we see that the radar nets that detect any raiders coming into this target are obviously that one that is going to be under attack and Rye radar net, and we see that there's an abundant number of squadrons that are in the vicinity and could respond. So this is the raid on Beachy Head by Luftflotte 2. And we start by placing the bombers in the bomber box. We don't have any ME-110s to place in the close escort box, so next, ME-109s in the channel patrol box. We check the channel patrol allocation chart. We have 5 bombers, so 2 ME-109s to channel patrol. And the remaining 4 ME-109s go to the hunt box. And here we see all bomber and fighter grouping set up in the raid display. Next we go to British detection. We roll a die and apply the modifiers and consult the detection track. Now we roll on the detection track to determine the warning and intelligence levels. We roll 1d6. The roll is a 6. We add the target card's observer core value in clear weather. That's a 1, so we're at 7. Plus 2 for each undamaged radar net listed on the target card. There are 2 undamaged radar nets, so that's an additional plus 4. So we're at 11. None of the other modifiers there apply. And there are 11 grouping in this raid. We add a plus 4, so it is a total of 15. And that's early warning and limited intelligence. Now we roll for possible raid rendezvous failure. We roll 1d6. The roll is a 3. Rendezvous fails if the raid's area has broken clouds and there's at least 8 or more grouping in the raid. The raid's area has clear weather, so there's no rendezvous failure. Now we go to the British raid response, and we start by referring to the eligible sectors chart on the target card to create the raid response pool according to the warning level, and the warning level here is early. And we can pick 3 squadrons for the raid response pool from Sector 211 group, 2 from each of Sector 1 and Sector 711 group, and 1 from each of Sector 3 and Sector 611 group. We start with Sector 2. We can pick 3, and that is all there is in Sector 2, so all 3 go into the cup. We can pick 2 from Sector 1, and we start with the more plentiful type, the Hurricanes, which we have 2. So we pick a second one, and we always pick Spitfires if we have equal number of types left. So those are the 2 from Sector 1. We pick 2 from Sector 7, and that's all there is in Sector 7 too, so 2 go in. We pick 1 from Sector 6, and they're all Spitfire squadrons, so we're going to pick 1. Pick this one. And 1 from Sector 3, there's only 1 Hurricane squadron, so in it goes. So we picked a total of 9. So we have 9 squadrons in the squadron raid response pool. So now to the raid response priority chart, we determine the modifiers. We're in August 11th, so there's no modifier for the date. The target is in 11th group, we get a +1, and the primary target is a radar, so we get a +2. We're at +3 right now. Target is not deep, warning is not very early. Intelligence is limited, and we have 13 grouping, so that's a +3, so we're at +6, and none of the other modifiers apply, so we're at a total of +6, and we roll 1d6. The roll is a 5, and that's a total of 11 then. So low, that means that we have 9 squadrons in the response pool. 4 will be taken out. So we take out 4 from the response pool, and we have 5 left. These are the 5 squadrons. Now we consult the raid response tactics chart. And we don't use the first 2 charts that you see here because they require accurate intelligence. Our intelligence is limited. We have 5 squadrons in the pool, and the number of grouping that exist, excluding the channel patrollers, is 9. So we cross-reference this column here with this row. The result is all squadrons. That means all 5 of them respond, and they're placed in the hunt box. So we have 5 squadrons against 4 ME-109 grouping in the hunt box. Next step, hunter interception, and one of these situations apply. We have fewer grouping than squadrons in the hunt box. That's the second bullet. In this case, we roll a die, and if the result is equal or lower than the number of excess squadrons, the excess squadrons move to the bomber box. Hurricanes move first. There's 5 squadrons, 1 in excess of the number of grouping that the Germans have. So the British need a 1. We roll 1d6. The result is a 6, which is not equal or lower than the number of excess squadrons. So that means those 5 British squadrons remain in the hunt box. Now we move on to the raid approach event, and we draw a raid event card and implement the approach event. So now we draw the top event card, and the approach event reads, and you see an A there, that means it applies to all versions of the game. British altitude advantage if any of the following apply. Very early warning or after September 11, none apply. Now we go to the next step, the hunter attack, and we add the combat ratings of all grouping and squadrons in the hunt box, and this is the total combat value. You see that the combat value of the grouping is 0, which is the number to the right of the selector letter. In the case of the squadrons, when you total the number which is to the right of the selector letter, the total is 17. So we locate the column that we will be using. The Luftwaffe is not depleted. 4 grouping in combat, so we use the column with the arrow. Now we have to locate the total combat value of 17, and there it is, 15 to 18, and now we have to roll 1d6 to determine the combat result that will apply to each of the squadrons and grouping based on their selector letters. This is German A, B, and C, and British A, B, and C. So we roll 1d6, and the result is a 3. That means that as to the Germans, we have the following results. The grouping with the selector A have an abort, B, no effect, C, light loss. And on the British side, those with a selector of A have no effect, which is the dash, B have a light loss result, and C, abort. Here we see the results of the combat applied. We have 2 British squadrons that suffered light losses, so each is placed in the light loss box corresponding to their sector and group in the RAF tote board. So one goes in sector 3, 11 group, and the other one is sector 1, 11 group in the light loss box. Now the German units that suffered light losses are placed here in the light loss German box. Each light loss counts as a victory point, but here they cancel each other out. So it's a total of 0, a net effect of 0. Now we have 2 abort results, 1 British squadron and 1 German grouping. The squadron that aborted is a full squadron, so it goes into the in-flight box reduced. And the German grouping that aborted is a full group, so it goes also to the in-flight box reduced. Now we have the units that were not affected by the combat. The ME-109 now goes to the close escort box. And the 2 unaffected squadrons are moved to the bomber box. Now we go to the next step, the raid target event. And we flip an event card and consult the target event for this version of the game. And it says squadron turnaround. Now we check the rule book. It tells us that RAF ground crews are working fast. Conduct squadron turnaround as if a 1 time advance had occurred, and see the turnaround summary on the map. There's an exception that applies if the current target is an airfield, but the current target is a radar net. So we conduct a squadron turnaround after a 1 time advance. All squadrons and rearm boxes go to the sectors, and there's no squadrons and rearm boxes. All squadrons in the land boxes go to rearm. We don't have any in the land boxes. Or all squadrons that are full in flight go to the rearm boxes. We don't have any squadron full in the in-flight box. And then all reduced in-flight squadrons go to the land box filled to flip to full. And there's a Hurricane squadron reduced in the in-flight box. So now this squadron goes to the land box and its corresponding sector and group. It is in sector 1, 11 group. And that's the end of that event. Now we go to the next step. Squadron interception. And we have also various if-then situations. The one that applies here is the second bullet. If squadrons are less than grouping in the bomber box, because there's 2 squadrons and 5 grouping in the bomber box. So we select the grouping to be attacked equal to the number of squadrons in the bomber box, and we pick full grouping before reduced grouping and of the specific type and the order stated therein. First, it would be Heinkel 111s. And there's 3 Heinkel 111 grouping. So the squadrons will attack the first 2, and the other Heinkel 111 grouping, as well as the Stukas, are not attacked. And note that we also move to the side an equal number of close escort grouping. We only have 1, so that close escort grouping goes with the bombers that are not intercepted. Now, to the squadron attack step, we add the combat ratings of all the squadrons and intercepted grouping in the bomber box. there's no intercepted grouping in the close escort box. And that's going to be the total combat value. Then we find the column on the combat results table, locate the row with the total combat value. We use this row to resolve combat like we did before. We roll a die and apply the combat results. The grouping will leave the raid or move to the close escort box. A note here to the users of the cards, that last bullet is not completely correct. The grouping can leave the raid or they stay to bomb the target, and that's the bomber grouping. But the squadrons obviously leave the raid because they already attacked the bombers in the first couple of bullets that we saw on this card. So I'm gonna correct this card 18, that last bullet. So we locate the number 2 column because there's 2 bomber grouping. And now we look for the combat value, total combat value, which is 19 in this column. And we have to go down, go down, go down, and we locate that 16 to 19 row. And now we roll 1d6. The result is a 5. German grouping with A suffer high losses. We have one of those, Heinkel 111 grouping has an A, and the one with a B, an abort result. And as to the British squadrons, the squadron with an A, which is both actually are A squadrons, they both suffer disruption results. So here we see the results of that combat. The Heinkel with the heavy loss result goes into the German and British heavy loss box. And that's 2 victory points for the British, which moves the victory point score from -2 back to 0. The 2 disrupted full squadrons go to the in-flight box reduced. And the full Heinkel 11 bomber group that aborted also goes to the in-flight box reduced. So as we can see, the 2 British squadrons managed to avoid the bombers that they attacked from dropping any bombs. However, they weren't able to intercept all of the bombers, so there will be a bombing round with these 3 grouping. And we go to step 19, conduct a bombardment of the raid's target with all grouping remaining. And if the target is damaged, we implement its effect. So we have 3 bomber grouping, 2 of which are Stukas, bombing, and the total bombing strength, when you add the number to the left of the letter selector, is 11. And here we see the 10-11 column. None of the listed column shifts apply. So we roll 1d6. And the roll is a 6H. That is heavy damage. And the heavy damage means that there are 3 damage points. So we subtract 3 victory points. There's additional possible damage on airfields and industry targets, but this target is a radar net. And as stated here in the bomb damage summary, when radar nets suffer heavy damage, we place a heavy damage marker on the attacked radar net. So the victory point score now goes to -3, and negative victory points are good for us, the Luftwaffe, in this game. And we place a heavy damage marker at Beachy Head radar net, and that's one of the objectives we set out to do. We place the Beachy Head target card early in the day at the 800-hour mark. There's going to be another raid set for Rye radar net scheduled for 10 a.m. or 1000 hours. And this radar net will not be operational. That means that the British are going to have a harder time detecting that raid. Now all grouping in the raid display box after bombing move to the in-flight box. Now we move all German grouping in the display, those in the bomber box, close escort box, and channel patrol box to the in-flight box. Now we conduct German recovery. All groupmen in the in-flight box are moved to their air bases or to the clock as per the German recovery schedule in the in-flight box. And we start by moving all bombers to air bases reduced. And all full fighters go to the clock 3 spaces ahead of the current time. So we have these 4 full-strength squadrons, and they will be placed 3 spaces ahead. That is in the 1400-hour space. So they'll be in time for another raid at that time, and there's a raid scheduled on Tangmere Airfield at that time slot. The clock check, and we flip the target card for the raid just completed face down. It should say on the raid planning display that we will do that now. And we flip this target card face down. And if there are any face-up target cards remaining in the current time segment, we return to raid selection and deployment. Now there's not any more at this time segment. If there are no such face-up target cards, we discard all face-down target cards and advance the clock marker to the next clock space for which we have raids planned. And we skip any clock spaces without planned raids. And the next clock space for which we have a raid planned is 1000 hours. So we move the time marker now to 1000 hours. Now the next bullet that applies is this one. If you move the clock marker to a clock space, that's what we did. We go to step 22, squadron turnaround. That's the next card. Squadron turnaround. We adjust the positions of all the squadrons based on the number of clock spaces that we just advanced the clock marker. Only 1. So we will be executing these adjustments or moves. That is, any squadrons in the rearm box go to the map sector. We don't have any in the rearm box. Any in the landing box go to the rearm box. So we have a Hurricane squadron here in sector 1. 11 group goes to the rearm box. Next, any full squadron in the in-flight box goes to the rearm box. We have no full squadrons there. Any reduced squadrons in the in-flight box go to the landing box full side. And we have 2 squadrons in the in-flight box reduced, so they go to their respective landing boxes full side up. We have a squadron that goes in 211 and the other one in 611's landing box. That concludes the squadron turnaround. We move on to the next segment. We would move all German fighter grouping now in the current clock space to their bases. There's no German fighter grouping in the 1000-hour clock space. Next segment. German fighter assignment, and we here can assign fighter grouping to raids planned for the current time segment. That is 1000 hours. And the next time segment by moving the grouping from their air bases to target cards. However, we cannot do this for a time segment in which we have already had an opportunity to do so, and we did have an opportunity to do so for the 1000 and 1200 hour segments. We already assigned fighters. But now it says that we return to step 9, raid selection and deployment, and there's a typo there that I will fix with version 1.6, and we conduct another raid. So what we do is we go to step 9, we pick up the deck. Very simple. Locate card number 9. The other cards go back in their same sequence to the draw pile. And we start with step 9 once again for the next raid. And the next raid is the second raid of the day against Weymouth Port by Luftflotte 3. Here we see the location of this next raid, Weymouth Port, in the area of 10 group. So we select the target card, which is the one you saw for Weymouth, and we place the group in as stated there in the card, and we're going to now proceed in a more expedited way. And we have 2 Me-109 grouping in the channel patrol box, 3 in the hunt box, and we have a total of 6 bomber grouping in the bomber box. Now we proceed with British detection. And applying all modifiers, the total is 12, so the warning level is sufficient. Intelligence, however, is limited. Now the dreaded raid rendezvous check. 6 raid rendezvous fails, only if 15 or more grouping are in the raid. There's a total of 11 groupings, so rendezvous does not fail. British raid response, and now we refer to the target card to create the raid response pool. We see that the warning level is sufficient, so it's a maximum of 3 squadrons from Sector 4-10 group and 1 squadron from each of Sector 3 and 1-10 group. So we pick 3 in Sector 4-10 group. There's just 3. So all 3 go into the response pool, and we pick 1 from Sector 3. Both are hurricanes, so we pick 1 hurricane, and we pick 1 from Sector 1. There's only a hurricane squadron. Blenheim squadrons are not eligible to fight. So we have our response pool with 5 British squadrons. The only modifiers that apply is that intelligence is limited. The raid has 11 group and a +2, and a -1 applies because there's 1 more target card to be resolved in this same time segment. So the net modifier is just +1. So we roll 1d6, a 2 modified to a 3. So the response priority is low. There is a total, as we stated before, of 5 squadrons responding, so we must remove 2 from the force pool. So there's 3 squadrons left that may respond. Now we consult the raid response tactics charts. Using the limited intelligence table, here we see 3 squadrons and 9 grouping because we exclude the 2 channel patrollers. The result is that all 3 squadrons will intercept. And the squadrons are placed in the hunt box. Hunter interception. The 3rd bullet applies. If as many or more grouping than squadrons are in the hunt box, all squadrons are intercepted and remain in the hunt box. And now we resolve a raid approach event. We flip an event card. Weather moves east, and we adjust the weather marker in the Luftflotte 2 area, which is currently clear, to match that in the Luftflotte's 3 area, which is patchy clouds. So that means no more clear weather in Luftflotte 2's area. Now to the next step, and this is the Hunter attack, and we resolve combat now, adding the combat ratings of all the grouping and squadrons, and proceeding as we have done before. There's 3 fighter grouping, and the total combat value is 11. So there is the number 3 column corresponding to the number of group, and now we locate the total combat value of 11, and that's the specific row, 11 to 14, and we roll 1d6. The roll is a 5. On the German side, all letter selectors A, B, and C abort. On the British side, A's have light losses, B no effect, and C disrupted. So all 3 German grouping abort. We'll just place 1 abort marker to the side of all 3 of them, and the A selector Spitfire suffers a light loss, and the Hurricane and the Spitfire with a C selector type are disrupted. The 3 German grouping that are at full strength that abort go to the in-flight box reduced. The two disrupted full squadrons go either to the bomb box reduce or in-flight box full, and there's an asterisk meaning that in the Eagle game they are moved to the bomber box. So they go to the bomber box reduced. And the Spitfire squadron with the light loss result goes to the light loss box of its corresponding sector and group, and that's 1 victory point lost by the British. And we place the unit in the light loss box of its sector, that is 4 of 10 group, and the British lose a victory point, so the score is now -2. So this is the situation, but now we have a raid target event. So we flip the topmost event card. The target event is non-essential target, reduce bomb damage result by 1, and the damage does not affect industry, airfield, or radar targets, so, although victory points still count. Now we move on to squadron interception, and here the situation that applies is that the number of squadrons is less than the grouping in the bomber box. So we select grouping to be attacked equal to the number of squadrons in the bomber box, and we pick full grouping before reduced grouping in the following order. First we start with Heinkel 111s, then Junker 88s, Dornier 17s, and so forth. So this means that only 2 grouping of Heinkel 111s will be attacked. The other 4 grouping are safe for now. Now we resolve the squadron attack. We determine the total combat value, and we resolve the combat as we've done before. This one we will do more expeditiously. The total combat value is 16, and there is 2 grouping of bombers. The roll is a 4, and the final result for the Germans is that the leftmost grouping aborts and the rightmost suffers a light loss. And for the British, both squadrons are disrupted. The light loss on the German grouping causes 1 victory point to be added to the British. And the German grouping goes to the light loss box. Now the victory point score is reduced to -1. The aborted German grouping goes into the in-flight box reduced. Both reduced British squadrons are moved to the in-flight box reduced. So that's the end of that squadron attack. There's still 4 German bomber grouping. On to step 19, bombardment. We add the bombing strength of each unit, which is the number to the left of the selector letter, and the total is 14. So we start in the 12 to 14 column, but there's a shift to the left because the weather is patchy clouds. So this is the final column. We roll 1d6. And the British got lucky. 1, no effect. Now all 4 bomber grouping plus the 2 channel patrollers go to the in-flight box. Next step is German recovery. We move all grouping in the in-flight box to their air bases or to the clock as per the German recovery schedule. So all bombers go to air bases reduced. All full-strength fighters go to the clock 3 spaces ahead, and all reduced fighters 4 spaces ahead flip to full. So the full fighters go to the 1600 hours box, and the reduced fighters to the 1800 hours box flip to full strength. Now to the clock check, and we flip the target card for the raid that we just conducted. So we flip this card, and note that there's another raid planned for this same time slot. The first bullet says that if there's any target cards face up remaining in the current time segment, we return to step 9, raid selection and deployment, and conduct another raid. So we'll do just that. So we return to step 9, raid selection and deployment. The next raid is Rye Radar Net. That's in sector 711 group. And notice that the radar nets that protect Rye are number 4, 5, and 6. Here we see the next target of our next raid, Rye Radar Net, which is actually radar net number 5. Beachy Head, which is one of those radar nets that helps out here in the detection, is out of commission because of heavy damage, so it won't be considered. But there's the radar net here, number 6 Forness, that will lend support to the detection effort. Now we place the German group and assigned to this raid in the raid display. Here's the raid display before placement. Here's the display after placement. 2 channel patrollers, 2 Me-110s in the close escort box, 5 bomber grouping in the bomber box, and 2 Me-109 grouping in the hunt box. A moment of truth now, British detection. So we go to the detection track. Total modifier is +9, 1 for the observer, core +4 for 2 undamaged radar nets, and a total of +4 because there's 11 grouping. So that's going to be +9, and we roll 1 die. The result is a 2, sufficient warning and limited intelligence. And now to the nothing but bad can happen step, which is the raid rendezvous check. We roll 1d6. The roll is a 1, and rendezvous fails if this is one of 2 or 3 raids from the same Luftflotte that was planned for the current time segment. The answer is no. This raid is one of 2 raids for the same time segment, but this raid is by Luftflotte 2. The prior raid that we resolved was from Luftflotte 3. So rendezvous does not fail. So no rendezvous failure occurs. Now to the British raid response, and we refer to the eligible sectors chart on the target card to create the raid response pool. Warning level is sufficient. 3 squadrons from Sector 711 group and 1 squadron each from Sector 2 and Sector 611 group. We picked 3 from Sector 7. There's only 2, so both go to the pool. 1 from Sector 2, we have the same number of Spitfire and Hurricane squadrons, 1, so Spitfires are selected when you have the same number of squadrons of different types. And 1 from Sector 611, we have in the cup 2 C types and 1 A type, so we're going to pick the B type. And that's our pool, 4 squadrons. To the raid response priority chart, the modifiers are +1 because this target is in 11 group, and also +2 because this is a radar net target. So we're at +3. Intelligence in this case is limited, and the raid has 11 grouping, so that's an additional +2 for a total of +5. We roll 1d6 to determine the response priority. 1 + 5, 6. It is low, and we have 4 squadrons, so 2 squadrons have to be pulled out. So these are the 2 squadrons left. Now we go to the raid response tactic charts. And we use the limited intelligence chart. 9 grouping, excluding channel patrollers, 2 squadrons, and when we cross-reference those 2, the result is no squadrons respond. And because the British failed to respond to a raid that had at least 1 bomber grouping, the British lose 1 victory point, and the score is now -2. To the next step, hunter interception, and the last bullet is the one that applies. So, no squadrons in the hunt box. We move all grouping in the hunt box to the in-flight box, and all grouping in the close escort box to the bomber box. They become strafers. So these 2 group and go to the in-flight box, and the 2 Me-110s in the close escort box go to the bomber box. Now we resolve a raid approach event, and we flip the topmost event card. The applicable approach event is squadrons patrol elsewhere. We move full B squadrons in eligible sectors to the in-flight box. We start with Sector 711. There's no B selector squadrons there, so none go to the in-flight box. Then we go to sector 211. There's one B squadron, so this one goes to the in-flight box. And finally, sector 611. And sector 611 has a Spitfire squadron with a B selector, so it also goes to the in-flight box. And note that the card also has as eligible sectors 1 and 5 of 11 groups, so we will check to see if there's B selector types there. No B squadrons in sector 1, and no B squadrons in sector 5. To the Hunter attack, but this step is skipped because there's no squadrons in the hunt box. Now we resolve a raid target event. We flip the topmost event card. And the applicable event, flak, reduce all A selector grouping in the bomber box. And there's two of those, Dornier 17 grouping, and also we have an ME110 grouping are now reduced. 17 squadron interception. We also skip this step because there's no squadrons in the raid display. Step 18 is also skipped because of the same reason. Now we conduct bombardment of the raid's target and hopefully gain some victory points. So now we add the bombing factors. The bombing factors contributed by the bombers is 20 and by the ME-110s is 4. But ME-110s, when attacking certain targets like radars, have their bombing strengths halved. So the total bombing factors are 22. So it would appear that we would use this column, but the weather is patchy clouds. And that's one column shift to the left. Now we roll 1d6. And the roll is a 3, 2 points of damage. Oh, so close to that heavy damage. So we subtract 2 victory points and the score is now -4. We place a light damage marker on the target, Rye radar station. And now all grouping go to the in-flight box. And now we proceed to the next step. And that's 20, German recovery. We move all grouping in the in-flight box to their air bases according to the German recovery schedule. So we begin with bombers to air bases and we place them on the reduced sides. And these are 3 grouping of Dorniers and 2 of Heinkel's of Le Flotte 2. Now we place the full fighters in the clock 3 spaces ahead. That's the 1600 hour space and they remain full side up. And the reduced fighter grouping 4 spaces ahead in the clock. And that's the 1800 hour space and it goes full side up. To the clock check. Now we flip the target card for the raid we just completed. As you can see, we have no more raids planned for the 1000 hour slot. So we would go to the second bullet. There's no face-up target cards for this time. And we would discard the target cards and advance the clock marker to the next clock space for which we have raids. The next clock space is 1200 hours. So we advance the time marker to 1200 hours. And because we moved the clock marker, now we go to the next to last bullet and we go to step 22. The next step, squadron turnaround. Now we adjust the positions of all the squadrons based on the number of clock spaces we just advanced the clock marker, which is 1. So we start from squadrons in the rearm box to map sector. We have 1 in sector 1, 11 group, and we place it on the map. Now we move those squadrons in landing boxes to their rearm box. There's 2 such squadrons, one in sector 211 group and another one in sector 611 group. And now all full squadrons in the in-flight box go to their rearm boxes. And we got 2 full squadrons. One goes to the 611 rearm box and the other one to the rearm box of 211. Finally, the reduced squadrons in the in-flight box go to the landing box full side up. And we have two 10-group squadrons, which are reduced, and we place them in their corresponding land boxes. Now we do German fighter turnaround, and we move all German fighter grouping in the current clock space or earlier clock spaces to their air bases full side up. However, as you can see, there's no fighter grouping at this time space. Now, German fighter assignment. Here we would assign fighter groupings to raids planned for this time segment, which is the 1200-hour time segment, but we do not assign fighters for a time segment in which we have already done so, and we have already assigned fighters for this time segment. So now we return to step 9, raid selection and deployment. We select the target card for the current time segment, and this is the raid we're going to execute. And this is the raid on the city of Southend. This is a minor raid, a coastal target in Sector 511 group. We have 2 bomber grouping and 1 Me-109 fighter grouping. Here we see our next target, the city of Southend. This is a minor raid. If you score 1 net victory point, it will be worth it. Let's see what happens. Now we place the grouping on the raid display according to the instructions shown there and which we've seen before. Because there's 2 bomber grouping, according to the channel patrol allocation chart, the sole fighter grouping has to go to channel patrol. Boy, we Germans, we love that English channel, don't we? Now to British detection, we roll a die and apply the modifiers and consult the detection track to determine warning and intelligence levels for this raid. Here are the modifiers. The target card's applicable observer core value is 2, and there's 2 on damage radar nets listed on the target card, so we're at +6, a total of 3 grouping. Add 1 more, we have +7. We roll 1 die. Roll is a 5, modified to an 11, sufficient warning but limited intelligence. Raid rendezvous check, we would normally roll here, but we won't even roll because none of the conditions in each one of the 6 possible results apply. So we just skip this step. Now to the British raid response step. I wish we could skip this one, but we can't. We have to refer to the eligible sectors chart to determine and create the raid response pool according to the warning level, and the warning level is sufficient. Under a sufficient warning level, we place up to 3 squadrons from Sector 5 and Sector 611 group, and up to 2 squadrons from Sector 411 group. In Sector 5, there's 3 squadrons, but 1 is of Blenheims, who don't participate in this type of action, so both Hurricane squadrons go into the pool. And fortunately for us, in Sector 6, where we could pick up to 3, there's only 1 Spitfire squadron, and that one goes. Finally, in Sector 4, we choose 2, and they're all Hurricane squadrons, so we'll pick the one with the B and the A selector. So we have a total of 5 squadrons in the response pool. Now to the raid response priority chart, let's see the applicable modifiers. The only one that applies is that the target sector is in 11 group. Note that the intelligence is limited, but this is a minor raid, so none of those possible situations below it apply. So with the +1 modifier, we roll 1d6. The roll is a 5 modified to a 6 low response priority, and with 5 squadrons in the pool, that means that we have to remove 2. And these are the 3 squadrons remaining for now, but now we have to check the raid response tactics chart to see if they actually go through with the interception. Intelligence was not accurate, it was limited. So we use this chart. And unfortunately for us, the British respawn with all 3 squadrons. And they're all placed in the hunt box, and this does not look pretty. We go now to Hunter interception, and before we resolve what appears to be a nasty attack, I just wanted to let you know that those bullets that you see there are what you see summarized here in the Hunter Interception Summary. If you're playing the game without these cards, you would probably, and if you don't know the Interception Summary by heart, you would probably have to be shifting counters around to see what it says down here. The advantage also of sequence of play cards is that such information can be displayed in the card. So now let's go to this particular situation, and the bullet that's going to apply is that there are no grouping in the hunt box. So there's no hunter interception, and the squadrons in the hunt box move to the bomber box. And that's what happens now. And the channel patrollers can't do anything. So let's go to the next step. The raid approach event, and it would be nice if it would be an event that would affect the British for once. So let's flip now the topmost card of the event deck. And this is the raid approach event, and the event that applies is squadrons evade hunters. Move all full B squadrons from the hunt box to the bomber box. Well, that already happened. So now we go to the next step. This is the hunter attack. Here we would add the combat ratings of all grouping and squadrons in the hunt box, but there's nothing in the hunt box. Remember, all the squadrons are in the bomber box, so we skip this step. Now we go to the raid target event, and we draw another event card to see if our luck improves. And the event is Ultra Intercept. That does not sound good for us, and for that we have to consult the event summary in the rulebook. And we place this ultra marker in the time marker of the next raid to be resolved. The one on south end has been resolved, so the next raid and onwards we suffer the following penalty, that the warning level for each of these next two raids will be very early and intelligence accurate for the Tangmere and the Southampton raid. So that really throws a brick into our plans. Now we move on to the next step, squadron interception, and the bullet that applies is the topmost bullet because there's 3 British squadrons and 2 German grouping, so all bomber grouping are intercepted. And we proceed now to the next step, squadron attack. So now we determine the total combat value and we resolve the attack as we have done before. The bombers contribute a combat value of 5 and the British fighters an additional 10 for a total combat value of 20. So we locate the column. That's the one with 2 grouping in combat, the 2 bomber group, and now we locate the total combat value of 20, which is in the bottom row, the worst row for us, row I. And now we roll 1d6 to determine how our bombers will fare. The roll is a 4, so you see that bombers with an A suffer heavy loss, with a B light loss, and with a C heavy loss. And on the British side, squadrons with an A, nothing. With a B, they're disrupted, and with a C selector, no effect. Now we apply the results. Both of our bombers suffer heavy loss, and they go to the heavy loss box. And that will cost us 4 victory points. The British earn 3 victory points, 2 for the heavy loss and 1 for the light box, so the victory point score is now -1. Now the disrupted full British squadron goes to the in-flight box, reduced. And you've just seen how a minor raid can become a big mess. We end this step by moving the British squadrons and the German channel patroller to the in-flight box, and they stay with their full sight up. The next step is bombardment, but the bombers are gone, so we skip this step. Now we go to German recovery and we move all grouping in the in-flight box to their bases based on the German recovery schedule. And there's only one to move, this full-strength ME-109 grouping, and it goes 3 spaces ahead in the clock. And we place it in the 1800-hour space. To clock check, and we flip the target card for the raid just completed face down. So we flip this target card, and we notice that we don't have any more raids planned for the same time slot, the 1200 hours. So now we're going to move to 1400 hours. And we're in the second bullet. We discard all face down target cards. I'm leaving them face down on the raid planning track. It doesn't affect the game. And we advance the clock marker to the next clock space for which there are raids planned. That would be the 1400 hour space. So the time marker goes now to 1400 hours, and we have a ton of German fighters that are now available to escort these 2 next raids. Now we go to the next to last bullet. We move the clock marker to a clock space, so we continue to step 22, squadron turnaround. So now we're in the airfield operations phase, and the first step is squadron turnaround, and we adjusted the clock by 1 space. So we make those moves shown there, first space 1 for 1 space. We start by moving squadrons from the rearm box to their map sectors. We have 2 squadrons in sector 211 group and 2 squadrons in sector 611 group. We place first the 211 group squadrons, and now we place the 2 squadrons in sector 611 group, which was previously empty. Now all squadrons in landing boxes go to their rearm boxes. So we move these 2 squadrons from 10 group, which I had erroneously placed on the landing boxes reduced. They should be full. They're moved now to their rearm boxes. Now all full squadrons in the in-flight box go to their rearm box, maintaining their full side status. So now we move the squadrons. We have one in sector 5 and another one in sector 6, both of 11 group, to their respective rearm boxes. Finally, any reduced squadrons in the in-flight box go to the landing box, but full side. So we move this Hurricane squadron from sector 411 group to its landing box, but full side. Now to German fighter turnaround. Here we move all German fighter grouping now in the current clock space and earlier spaces to their air bases full side up. So we return to their air bases these 4 fighter grouping from Luftflotte 2 and these 6 fighter grouping from Luftflotte 3. And now to German fighter assignment. We assign fighter grouping to raids planned for this time segment and the next time segment, if any, by moving grouping from their air bases to the target cards. And we would not assign fighters for a time segment in which we have already done so. And now this time segment, 1400 hours, was one of those time segments in which we did not assign any fighters before. So now we have a chance to place a fighter grouping to escort these raids. And we see here that the raid on Tangmere has 6 bomber grouping assigned. We have a maximum this turn of 11 grouping, so we can place 5 fighter grouping there. And the raid against Southampton has 5 bomber grouping assigned, so we can place up to 6 fighter grouping with that raid. So we will place 5 ME-109 grouping with the Tangmere airfield raid, and in our 6 remaining fighter grouping with Luftflotte 3 with the Southampton raid. Now we return to step 9, raid selection and deployment, and we conduct the next raid. So here we are. We select the target card from the current time. We're at 1400 hours and conduct the next raid. And here we see our target, Tangmere Airfield, Sector 111 group. On a normal day, this would be a very good site because there's no squadrons in that particular sector, but because we have that infamous Ultra event, the British have very early warning and accurate intelligence. So it's going to probably be all the squadrons that you see on the screen and their mothers paying us a surprise visit in that Tangmere raid. So we place the bombers and the fighters on the raid display. So here we see how the grouping are placed on the display. There's 6 bomber grouping. That means there's 2 channel patrollers. That leaves us with 3 fighter grouping that we place in the hunt box. Now normally we would go to this step, British detection, but because of the Ultra event, the warning level is very early and intelligence accurate for this raid and the one scheduled for 1600 hours. So now we go to the raid rendezvous check, see what else can go wrong. So we roll 1d6. Rendezvous fails if 11 or more grouping are in the raid and the Luftwaffe is not depleted. Yes, that is the case. The Luftwaffe is not depleted and there's exactly 11 grouping in the raid. So now we roll the die again to see the effect of the rendezvous failure. This time the roll is a 1, so all grouping with an A selector are reduced. And there's plenty of selector A types here. We have 1 channel patroller with an A, 2 bomber grouping with A's, and 1 of the fighter grouping in the hunt box. So we flip 4 grouping to their reduced sides. And now to the British raid response step. We refer to the eligible sectors chart on the target card and create the raid response pool. We use the early column for early and very early warnings. We can pick up the 4 squadrons from sector 111 group and 2 squadrons each from sector 211 group, sector 411 group, and sector 311 group, and finally 1 squadron from sector 711 group. So we pick 4 squadrons, up to 4 from sector 111. There's only 2, so both Hurricane squadrons go in the pool. Now we can pick up to 2 squadrons from sector 410 group. There's only 1 eligible squadron, the Spitfire squadron, because the Blenheims don't fight in the day. So that one goes into the response pool. So now we pick 2 squadrons from sector 211. We start and we see that there's 3. We pick the most plentiful first, Hurricane. And now in case of ties, we pick a Spitfire squadron. And we have our 2 squadrons from that group. And now we pick 1 squadron from 711. We'll pick this Hurricane squadron, and we have our pool. And the pool now consists of 6 squadrons, but we have to check the raid response tactics. So we're going to determine the priority first, and the modifiers that apply is a +1 because the target sector is in 11 group, a +2 because it is an airfield, so we're at +3, and a +2 because intelligence is accurate, and there's at least 1 bomber group, so we're at +5, and no other modifiers apply. So we roll 1d6 and apply a +5. The result is a 5 modified to a 10, all out response priority, and we cross-reference that with the number of squadrons in the response pool, 6, so only 1 squadron is taken out, which means that 5 squadrons will respond. 5 squadrons responding for now. We check the raid response tactics charts, and we start checking here, accurate intelligence, and we use chart A first. We cross-reference the number of grouping in the hunt box, which there's 3, with the number of squadrons in the force pool, which is 5. And the result is yes, all 5 will intercept. And here we have all 5 intercepting squadrons. They're facing 3 German grouping in the hunt box. Now we go to hunter interception. The bullet that applies is the second one. If fewer grouping than squadrons are in the hunt box, we roll a die. And if the result is equal or less to the number of excess squadrons, those excess squadrons are moved to the bomber box, Hurricanes moving first. So the British have 5 squadrons, 3 grouping. We roll 1d6. And the British need to roll a 1 so that at least 1 squadron moves to the bomber box. But the roll is a 4, so all squadrons remain in the hunt box. Next step, raid approach event. We flip the topmost event card. The applicable approach event reads, squadrons patrol elsewhere. Move full C squadrons in eligible sectors to in-flight box. And this sounds like a really great event, but it only pertains to squadrons of eligible sectors in the map, which are moved to the in-flight box. So squadrons of eligible sectors that are currently in the raid display about to shoot down our planes, those stay where they are. So we check in Sector 1, 11 group. There's no planes there to move or to place in the in-flight box. The next sector is 410. There's only a Blenheim, but those don't qualify because they only fly at night. The next sector is 311, also empty, so nothing to do there. Then we have 211, and there's 2 squadrons there, but none has a C selector, so they stay where they are. And the final one is 711, an A selector type, so it stays where it is. Now to the hunter attack step, we determine the total combat value and resolve the combat in the hunt box. The 3 German grouping contribute only 1 to the combat value. The 5 British squadrons contribute 17, so the total combat value is 18. To the combat results table, we locate the 3 in the no depletion row. That's the number of grouping in combat. And now we look for the combat value of 18. That's in row F. Now we locate the corresponding table and we roll 1d6. The die roll is a 4. On the German side, the losses for grouping A, B, and C respectively are disruption, light loss, and abort. And for the British squadrons A, B, and C, disruption, disruption, and abort. So let's now take into account the combat results. Grouping A is disrupted, B suffers light loss, and C aborts. Now let's take a look at the British results. 2 squadrons are disrupted and the remaining 3 abort. The light loss German grouping is moved to the light loss box and gives the British 1 victory point. And the victory point score now is 0. The disrupted grouping goes to the in-flight box reduced. Strength grouping goes also to the in-flight box and is also reduced. Now both disrupted British squadrons go to the bomber box reduced or in-flight full, and there's an asterisk, meaning that in the Eagle version, they go to the bomber box reduced. And the 3 full squadrons that aborted go to the in-flight box reduced. So now we see that 2 British squadrons progressed to the bomber box. Next step, the raid target event. So we flip an event card. And the result is navigational error. If the raid target is inland or deep, there's a 2-column shift to the left when bombing, but this is a coastal target, so luckily there's no effect based on this event. Now to squadron interception, we have 2 squadrons intercepting a total of 6 bomber grouping, so the bullet that applies is the second one. We select grouping to be attacked equal to the number of squadrons in the bomber box. That's going to be 2, and we pick full types before reduced grouping and of specific types. And the first type that we pick are Heinkel 111s, and there are at least 2 Heinkel 111s in this combat. And we see the last 2 in the row are full strength Heinkel 111s. So those are the bomber grouping that will be involved in the combat. Now to squadron attack, and we add the combat ratings of the participating squadrons and grouping, and we determine the total combat value and resolve the combat situation. The Combat value for the Germans is 12, and for the squadrons it's an additional 4, for a total of 16. So there's 2 grouping in combat, and we locate now the row corresponding to the total value of 16, and that is row H, which is the next to last. And now we locate the specific combat table that we will be using, and we roll 1d6. On a 4, and the German results from A, B, and C are abort, light loss, and heavy loss if we have a C grouping. And for the Allies, A is no effect, and the other 2 selectors, disruption. Now we apply the results. So you can see we took the worst part of the fight. One grouping light loss, the other grouping heavy loss. So we move them to their corresponding loss boxes. And that scores 3 victory points for the Allies. With those 3 points, we flip the victory point marker to its plus side, and now the score is 3. The disrupted British squadron goes to the in-flight box reduced. And the remaining non-effective Hurricane squadron goes to the in-flight box. But we have 4 bomber grouping that can now perform bombing. And that's the next step, bombardment. So we conduct a bombardment of the target and apply any damage. We add the bombing ratings, the ones to the left of the selector letters, and the total bombing strength of this raid will be 11. So we start in this column, we check for column shifts. There's 1 to the left because of patchy clouds. And we roll 1d6. The roll is a 5, 2 damage points. So that brings the score now down to 1. And all German grouping now in the raid display go to the in-flight box. On to German recovery according to the German recovery schedule. So we start with bombers, go back to their air bases reduced. Full-side fighter grouping go to the clock 3 spaces ahead, and 3 spaces ahead would land us in the end of day space. So this grouping goes back to its fighter base. And reduced fighters go to the clock space 4 spaces ahead. That's going to land them in the end of day space, so they go to their bases too. And we return again to step 21, clock check, and we flip the target card of the raid just completed, face down. So we finish this raid. We don't have any more raids in the 1400 time space. The next one is 1600 hours. But remember that the warning and intelligence levels will be those shown. Very early warning and accurate intelligence for the 1600 hour raid. The second bullet is the one that applies. So we advance the clock marker to the next clock space for which there are raids planned. And the next clock space is 1600 hours. We go again to the next to last bullet. Because we moved the clock marker to a clock space, we go to the next step, squadron turnaround. Now we adjust the positions of the British squadrons. The clock moved 1 space. So first we start with all squadrons in rearm boxes go to their map sectors. There's 4 in rearm boxes, 2 for Group 10, 1 in Sector 1, and the other one in Sector 4. And we have 2 more squadrons in rearm boxes in 11 Group. 1 in Sector 5, and the other in Sector 6. Now those in landing boxes go to rearm boxes. There's only 1 11 Group squadron in a land box, so it goes to the rearm box. Any full squadrons in the in-flight box go to the rearm box, but there's no full squadrons in the in-flight box, so now any reduced squadrons there go to the landing box full side. There's a total of 5 reduced squadrons in the in-flight box. Now we place them in their respective landing boxes. Now we proceed to German fighter turnaround, and we move all German fighter group in the current clock space and earlier spaces to their air bases full side up. We have 6 fighter grouping from Luftflotte 3 and 3 fighter grouping from Luftflotte 2 returning to their air bases. German fighter assignment, and here we would assign fighter grouping to raids planned for the current time segment and the next time segment, but only if they did not receive any fighters before. And we have already set the fighters before for the last raid, which is the 1800-hour raid at Southampton. So we just return to step 9, raid selection and deployment, and conduct another raid. And here we are, raid selection and deployment, and we select the target card from the current time segment, and this is the raid to be executed. The target is the port of Southampton, a coastal target in sector 111. Luftflotte 3 will conduct this raid. It has 5 bomber grouping, among them 2 of Stuka's, the best plane of World War II. Well, I may be a little biased. And 6 Me-109 fighter grouping. Let's see how the Luftwaffe fares here. Here we see the target of our next raid, the port of Southampton. And polling and Worth radar stations are fully operational. Weather is patchy clouds. Now we place the German grouping on the raid display. And we have 2 channel patrollers, 2 Me-110 grouping in the close escort box, and 5 bombers in the bomber box. And finally, 2 Me-109 grouping in the hunt box. And we again skip the British detection step by virtue of the ultra event that we drew earlier, by which the British have very early warning and accurate intelligence. To the raid rendezvous check, where nothing good can happen, and we roll 1d6. And we roll a 4, and that's the only result that qualifies for this raid, because we have exactly 11 grouping, and the Luftwaffe is not depleted. So rendezvous fails, and we have to roll once again to determine the effect of rendezvous failure. And the roll is a 6, all C selector grouping leave the raid. This does not look good. We have 1 channel patroller with a C, 1 close escort grouping, and 2 bomber grouping, also with C, so they leave the raid. And all you can say when you see something like this is, hey guys, thanks for nothing. Next step, British raid response, and we refer to the eligible sectors chart on the target card to create the raid response pool. And we use the E column once again, up to 3 squadrons from Sector 111 group and 2 squadrons from Sector 410 group and Sector 211 group, 1 squadron from Sectors 3 and 711 group. We can pick 3 from Sector 111 group. Unfortunately, there's no eligible squadrons there. We can pick 2 from Sector 410 group. There's 2 there, but 1 is a Blenheim squadron, so only the Spitfire squadron goes into the pool. And we can also select 2 from Sector 211 group, and that's all that there is there, 2. And now we move on to Sector 311 group. Sector 3 is completely empty, so nothing there. And finally, we can pick 1 from Sector 711 group. And Sector 7 has just 1 Hurricane squadron, which goes into the pool. And there's 4 squadrons in the pool. Now we check for response priority, and let's see which are the relevant modifiers. This target is in 11 groups, so we start with a +1, and the primary target is not a radar net or airfield or industry, so that doesn't apply. The intelligence, however, is accurate, and the raid has at least one bomber group. That's a +2, so we're at +3, and no other modifiers apply. So we roll 1d6. The result is a 4, modified to a 7, low priority, which cross-referenced with 4 squadrons in the force pool produces a result that we have to remove 2 at this time. So let's see if the remaining 2 squadrons will go forward with the interception. We use the accurate intelligence chart. We start with chart A. We have 2 fighter grouping in the hunt box and 2 squadrons remaining, and the result is yes, both squadrons will respond. And we place them in the hunt box. Now we go to the next step. Hunter interception. This is our chance to drive them away, and the bullet that applies is that as many or more grouping than squadrons are in the hunt box. That means that all the squadrons are intercepted and remain in the hunt box. And now to a raid approach event that, given our luck, may ruin this whole affair for us. Let's see what happens. We flip the topmost event card, and the applicable approach event reads, Squadrons patrol elsewhere. Move full A squadrons in eligible sectors to in-flight box. When we check the eligible sectors, we see that there's sector 311 is empty, 111 is empty. 410 has a C selector type, which is not the one that has to return. But 7th sector 11 group has an A type, so this squadron goes to the in-flight box. Now to the hunter attack step, and we add the combat ratings of grouping and squadrons in the hunt box to determine total combat value and resolve combat. And this is a good fight for us. Our grouping contribute no points for combat value. The Hurricane squadrons contribute all 6, so the total combat value is 6. To the combat results table, we locate the 2 column, no depletion, and we slide down to total combat value of 6, and this is the combat table that we will be using. We roll 1d6. And the German results from A to C, disruption, disruption, abort, and the British results, disruption, abort, and 1 light loss if it is a C selector type. So let's mark each unit with their corresponding result. And we see both German grouping are disrupted, and they are both placed in the in-flight box. The abort result on the British squadron causes it to go to the in-flight box reduced. And the disrupted Hurricane squadron, because of the special Eagle rules, will move to the bomber box reduced and will be the only British squadron that made it there. There's 1 Heinkel 111 grouping which will be attacked, and the other 2 grouping will make it through to bomb the target. But first, we have a raid target event. And the event reads, Big Wing, if more than 1 squadron from 12 group is attacking, shift down 1 row for squadron attack. But there's no 12 group squadrons participating in this combat situation, so this event is ignored. Next, we go to squadron interception. The bullet that applies is the second one, because squadrons are less than grouping in the bomber box. We select the grouping to be attacked, equal to the number of squadrons in the bomber box, that is 1, and we pick full strength grouping before reduced ones, and in the type order that we see here, first with Heinkel 111 grouping, and there is at least 1 of those. So the Hurricane will attack 1 Heinkel 111 grouping, and we also move aside an equal number of close escort grouping. Well, there's only one close escort grouping, so it goes and leaves with the non-intercepted bombers. Now to squadron attack, we add the combat ratings of the squadron and intercepted bomber grouping to determine a total combat value, and then we resolve combat in the combat results table. So here we see that the bomber contributes 6 to the combat value, the Hurricane, which is reduced 2, for a total combat value of 8. So we find the column here, 1 grouping participating in combat, and we locate the 8, which is in row G, one of the least encouraging rows for us. And we roll 1d6. The result is a 5, and that German bomber grouping is a locator, so it suffers a light loss. The Hurricane is also an A, so it suffers only disruption. And the Heinkel grouping is placed in the German light loss box. And that gives the British another victory point, increasing their score to 2. The disrupted reduced squadron goes to the in-flight box, and it stays reduced. The next step is the bombardment step, and we have 2 bomber grouping. And we see that the bombing strength is 3 for the Stuka and 5 for the Heinkel grouping, for a total of 8. We locate the 8, that's the 8-9 column. There's patchy clouds, so the final column will be the 6 column, and now we roll 1d6. The roll is a 4, just 1 point of bomb damage. That reduces the score to 1. And there's no additional bomb damage for ports. Now to finish this step, we move all German grouping in the raid display to the in-flight box. Now we go to the next step. German recovery, and all grouping in the in-flight box go to their air bases according to the German recovery schedule. Bombers go to their air bases reduced, and all full fighters to the clock 3 spaces ahead, but we're in the 1600 space, so this is going to place them in the end of day space, so they go to their airbase. Clock check, and we flip the target card for the raid that we just completed face down. So we flip this Southampton target card. That's the end of the target cards for this day. And we don't have any more planned raids for the rest of the day. There's no more face-up target cards for this time segment, so we advance the clock marker to the next clock space for which there are raids planned. And we skip any clock spaces without any planned raids. If there are no more planned raids, we move the clock marker to the end of day space. And that is precisely the situation. There's no more planned raids, so the marker moves to the end of day space. And now we go to the last bullet. If you move the clock marker to the end of day space, go ahead to step 25, resolve night raids. So we have to skip 4 cards, 22, 23, 24, and now normally we would return to step 9 if there were any more raids. There's no more raids, so now we go to card or step 25. And step 25, resolve night raids. The first bullet is a mistake. In the next edition of the cards, which will be version 1.6, I will completely eliminate that bullet. That bullet is a carryover from the Lion version of the sequence of play cards. In the Lion version, you roll on the German night raid commitment table. See, it's RAF Lion only, so that bullet is eliminated. So we go to the second bullet. We roll a die on the night raid interception table to determine the interception chance. And to determine the chance, we have to cross-reference the number of night raiding grouping and the number of night patrol squadrons. So there are 2 German bomber grouping in the night raids display. And let's see how many Blenheim squadrons in the night patrol boxes. Only 2. So here we're supposed to roll a die, and if the result is equal to or less than the interception chance, a number of squadrons equal to the die result intercepts the grouping. The problem is that when we cross-reference 2 night raiders with 2 patrolling squadrons, the result is 0. So there is no night raid interception. And because there's no night raid interception, we don't resolve any night raid combat, and night raid combat uses the same procedure than the one we have seen for day combat. So that we go now to the last bullet and we roll a die on the night raid bombing table to determine any damage to British targets. And we locate the column that is the first column, 2 bomber grouping conducting night raids. Not very encouraging. Only on a result of 6. The British lose 2 victory points and 2 industry damage points. Any other result is no effect. And the result is a 5, no effect. So we finish with step 25. Next, step 26, squadron and group reset. We move all in-flight squadrons to their assigned sectors on the map, full side up. And we have 2 Hurricane squadrons from Sector 2, 11 Group, and 1 Hurricane squadron from Sector 7, 11 Group. We place them in their sectors, full side up. Now to the second bullet. We move all squadrons in landing and rearm boxes to their assigned sectors on the map, retaining their facing full or reduced. As to those in the rearm box, there's only 1, Sector 3, 11 Group. It is full side up, and it retains such facing. As to squadrons and land boxes, there's a total of 5. 4 from 11 Group and 1 from 10 Group, and they're all full side up. And full side up is how we place them in their sectors. And by mistake, I had this Spitfire squadron with good old friends from the 1st sector, and this is a Sector 2, 11 Group Spitfire squadron, so we simply place these guys here in their correct sector. Now to the last bullet, and we move all grouping in the in-flight box, but there's none right now, or the night raid boxes where we have 2 or any other space of the clock to their assigned air bases full side up. So we take the 2 German grouping in the night raids box and we place them in their corresponding air bases, and we place them full side up. Now we go to the next step. Day advance, and we draw a day event card. We haven't seen one of these in this game so far, to determine the number of days to advance the day marker on the calendar. So let's flip the topmost day event card. And it reads that 3 days have elapsed. So we now advance the day marker, the number of spaces shown on the day event card, and 1 victory point is earned for each day elapsed. So we move the day marker from the August 11 box to August 14. And we add 3 victory points, and the score is now at +4. And we see that the other bullets don't apply. There's no preparations for Sea Lion that have begun. The day marker has not moved to or past the September 8 space, and it's not after September 10. So we go to the next card. And it is the day event step. We carry out the event listed on the day event card we just drew. And the day event reads, set German target priorities. And we refer to the first row, the 8, 11 to 20 row. And what it means is that now radars are low priority, ports high, airfields medium, industry medium, and cities low priority. And this is how the game, in a certain way, simulates the interference by Hitler and Goering. Now you see that radars are going to be low priority. Let's place the markers according to the new priorities. Now you see that the only high priority targets are ports. Radar is now low, and also industry moved from low to medium. On to the next step, update replacement points, and we adjust the replacement point markers on the replacement track according to the replacement schedule on the day event card we just drew for each British and German airplane type and for the British experienced pilot reserve. And here we have the replacement schedule. We add the following levels to the replacement track. Hurricane replacements, we add 7 Spitfires, 5 Blenheims, 1 German fighter grouping, 5 replacement points, and level bomber grouping, 4 replacement points. Now we adjust the replacement levels accordingly. After adjustment, at 16 we have the Hurricane and German fighter replacements. Bomber replacements at 13, Spitfires at 12, British experienced pilots at 7, and the British receive 1 Blenheim replacement point. That marker started at the 1 box, so now they have 2. And we return the Blenheim squadrons to their map sectors. This one goes in Sector 3, 12 group, and this one Sector 6, 11 group. To determine the number of experienced pilot points that we add, we have to check the current victory point score. So the third row applies -9 to +14. We add 3 experienced pilot points. So the new level is 10 for experienced pilots. Now, light loss replacement for each squadron or group. In a light loss box, we spend 1 aircraft replacement point to move the unit to its sector or airbase. And for each British squadron, we also expend 1 experienced pilot point. So we see here that the British have 3 squadrons in the light loss box, 2 of Spitfires and 1 of Hurricanes. We spend now replacement points for each of the types, and they return to the map to their sectors. We have a Spitfire returning to Sector 4, 10 group. The other Spitfire returning to Sector 1, 11 group. And the Hurricane goes into Sector 3, 11 group, and I saw a mistake. This squadron is supposed to go in Sector 4, 11 group, and that is way over here. Now we reduce the replacement levels accordingly. The Spitfire replacements by 2 and Hurricanes by 1. And the experienced pilot marker has to be reduced by 3. Now we do light loss replacement for the Germans. Here's a pretty crowded German light loss box. Now we expend 3 fighter replacement points and 3 bomber replacement points to return these units to their bases. And we adjust the bomber and fighter replacements accordingly. Now on to heavy loss replacement. For each squadron or grouping in a heavy loss box, we spend 1 aircraft replacement point to move it to a light loss box. Now we spend 1 bomber replacement point per grouping in the German heavy loss box to move all 3 bombers to the light loss box. And we adjust the replacement track accordingly. Now we go to the reinforcement entry step, and if we move the day marker to or past day spaces containing any German reinforcement grouping, we would place those grouping at their assigned bases. We're just playing one turn, but we didn't move the marker over any space that had any grouping, so that doesn't apply. We go to the second bullet. If the day event card indicates the entry of a British reinforcement, we draw 2 squadrons from the reinforcement pool and place one in its assigned sector full, and we return the other one to the pool. And yes, the card reads Enter Reinforcement Squadron. And here we have the pool of reinforcement squadrons denoted by the R in the bottom left-hand corner. So now we're going to pick 2 squadrons from this pool, and we keep one. So we have a Spitfire squadron from sector 111 and a Hurricane squadron from sector 411. And 111 has already 4 squadrons. 411 is not in such bad shape, has 3 squadrons, but it's a pretty far away group. So we're going to pick the Spitfire for 111, and we place it in its sector. And now there's 5 squadrons in that sector. And finally, we move on to the last card of the deck, the card Shuffle Check. And here we would return all German strategy cards to the strategy deck and shuffle. We didn't draw any in this turn. If the target deck or raid event deck is clearly shorter, it should say than its discard pile, I'll fix that, we will shuffle the cards, the discards back into the deck, form a new deck. That doesn't apply. It says do not shuffle the day event deck unless it's completely depleted. If we're playing the Battle of Britain scenario and completed the 4th raid day, add cards 35 through 44 to the target deck and reshuffle the deck. So let's suppose we did all that, or did all that apply. Then we go to the last bullet, return to step 1, German night raid planning. And the way you do it with these sequence of play cards, you follow the following procedure. You flip them all together at once, and you're ready to go with step 1, and you start all over again. And of course, this is the end of this demonstration. We played 1 full turn using the sequence of play cards. These are the Eagle sequence of play cards. I did a set also for the Lion game, and you can print those cards, and I recommend laminating them because you're going to flip them a lot. They are available at BGG's page for this game, and I think they help the flow of the game to flow easily. You won't make mistakes as to sequencing, as to what comes next, and I think it really helps the flow of the game, and I believe it's more useful than this outline that you get here on the map that, you know, because of space limitations, there's not really a lot that can be written there. So, this is Stuka Joe signing off for now, but before signing, I want to remind everybody I played with this version 1.5, so I'm going to upload version 1.6, and if it is uploaded, I think I already uploaded that one, I'm going to fix it to version 1.7. So this is the end of this 1-turn demonstration using the sequence of play cards. This is the RAF Eagle version, and the ones that I used here were version 1.5. Version 1.6 has already been uploaded. It is available in BGG's file page for this game. Now, I think there may be still a couple of things to be corrected. So if that is the case, you'll see very soon a version 1.7. I think that this type of tool can help players go through the phases and steps of each turn easily, avoiding mistakes that have to do with skipping steps or doing things out of sequence. This is not really a complex game, it's more a heavily procedural game. And this, I believe, is something that will take away a lot of the weight of all the procedures that you have to go here through. So I hope that you enjoyed this one-turn demonstration of RAF Eagle using the sequence of play cards. Feel free to comment in the comments section. I'm all ears in terms of improving the cards and making it easier for people to play the game. So this is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching.